Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thru podcast. I'm Bryan. Today we're with Catherine Hunter and Rebecca Garrett. We've all been contributing to the Thru project since we started. So again, as always, our link is in the description to check out all our kind of content from everybody that has contributed over the last few months, including Rebecca, who's making her first appearance on the podcast today. She's been really good with all her content in terms of she's added a lot of kind of colour, arts and crafts, things that really bring out like a lot of kind of positives to mental health, which is obviously what we're all about. We're giving mental health a voice. So we are in January, we are in a lockdown, we are suffering January blues like many others. And like we did on last week's episode, we're just kind of picking up a wee bit, and we're going to just start talking about these different conditions that still exist, no matter how bad the outer world gets that we're all living in. And today's subject is on body image and the impact that has on one's mental health and that journey that plays a part for everyone and across all ages as well. Catherine, we've spoken about this before, haven't we? And just, how it's maybe something everybody's dealt with at some point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from my own personal experience, I've suffered and had to deal with body image and body expectations from a relatively young age. And I know that's not gone away overnight. And as much as we campaign about it, there's still a long way to go. And I'm just really, really excited to share my experience and as well as listen to Rebecca's experiences as well, because we've both been on quite an exceptional journey when it comes to health and body image.
Yeah, and I think like lots of other things that we talk about, mental health is always a very personal journey. It's a very personal, like struggle when it's bad, and especially and when it's good, and it's all very relative to how you personally kind of deal with that. So Rebecca, obviously we've all chatted before about just kind of different things that we've dealt with over the years, but obviously you are able to kind of discuss a wee bit more about body image and specifically eating disorders as well.
Yeah, because the two of them are very much linked. Certainly with my own experience, it started when I was very, very young, and I would blame it partly on the media and the other part on just unfortunate and early puberty. I was very, very young when I developed into a woman, but I was still a child mentally, because I was like 9 years old, all of a sudden I had these things, which the other girls my age didn't have. Also, suddenly I was noticing grown men looking at me in a sexual way, which when you're a young 9, 10, 11-year-old, obviously it's nothing actually happened of it, but it was just the thought that men were ogling me, and I was just, I wasn't having any sexual thoughts at all because I was a child, and it was almost like maybe by the time I got to about 12, and I started secondary school, and it was magnified because of a bigger year group, and it became even more apparent that I was different. It just, I just felt I couldn't cope with it, and what I did to try and cope with it, albeit not a very good way of coping with it, was I just stopped eating. Really, I just felt almost within a few months. These had shrunk right down, and I liked the fact that I didn't look sexual anymore. I looked more childlike, and that definitely it was something that it was a terrible thing, obviously, to do. It's not something I would advocate, and but I feel as if nowadays there's a lot more talk about that sort of stuff, and it would be more noticeable. I don't know. Certainly, I'm a very honest person, but that brought out the worst in me. It was like an addiction almost. Became a master of deception. I would be lying to my my family, my close friends, you know, what I'd eaten that day, what had, you know, I would just be totally, I had all this planned out in my head, how I could lie about what I'd had that day. Oh, I've eaten at school, I ate loads at school. It must have been awful for my family to go through that, and it's something that even today, although I've recovered, you know, it's still something I feel guilty about for putting them through. But it just shows. I mean, there's so many there's so many different facets to body image. It can manifest as an eating disorder. It can manifest as all sorts of things. I mean, I went through a stage where I looked like a drag queen because I just totally hated the way I looked, and I just wanted to just alter everything about my face, and I chopped my hair really short, and it was just...
It's a broad subject, isn't it? And it's like, you know, you've touched on so many ways that affected you personally, but I think like many things that we struggle with mentally and growing up that lasts does stem from childhood. And by the sounds of it, yours was obviously very young. You were kind of made to feel uncomfortable very young, and the way you dealt with that at your own level, sounds like you dealt with a lot of that on your own. And is that you made kind of changes, you tried to make kind of changes to the way you look. So basically, just to kind of draw, you know, back, what was kind of going through your point, and was your at that stage, what was going through your head at that stage, and was that a case of you said that you're trying to make yourself kind of like thinner at the time as well? Were you just trying to deal with it? And
well, also there was one point I felt that or I do feel that it's something that people assume is mental illness, or any kind of mental illness stems from, you know, childhood issues. Now, I can't emphasize enough how idyllic my childhood was. I had a great upbringing. I've got brilliant parents. There's no reason outwardly, if you know what I mean, that I should be feeling certain ways. It just shows it can affect anybody across all walks of life, you know. There's this fallacy that, you know, that people it's only people who have had had a terrible upbringing or whatever. There's that fallacy that it's only really them that can suffer from mental health issues or question their body shape or size, and it's just it can happen to anybody. I mean, obviously the media as well, I felt that was very much, you know, this is back in the 90s, so, you know, there was this sort of heroin chic that was in, which was just totally just irresponsible of them to, you know, portray that as the ideal. So when you're surrounded by that, when you're surrounded by it as an adult, it's hard enough, you know, but you've got the mental capacity to realise, you know, that's wrong, that's not what we should look like. But when you're an impressionable child, no matter what your peers, you know, your close friends and your family are saying to you, if they tell you you're beautiful, ultimately it's things like the media, which is everything really and everywhere. It's things like that, and comparing yourself to, you know, your equal, your peers, it's these things that can really have a major impact, I think.
I think sorry, go, Catherine.
No, it's just something that you said earlier that got my attention, was not knowing what was going on and maybe not getting the support and advice that you needed from a young age at school. And I think that's really important to highlight. I think when I eventually started going through the change, at least I kind of knew what was happening to my body. We'd already been sat down, we'd had a discussion with the nurse, we were told about all the birds and the bees and what women and men were likely to experience at any age and what changes they might expect to their body. Do you think that if you maybe had a bit more support from school from a younger age, maybe you would have known what was going on with you, or maybe found it easier to accept?
Interesting, because, well, my mum was she was very, very good. I don't know what I would have done without her, to be honest. My mum immediately noticed when changing, you know, and she was straight on the ball. She got me a wee book, which I've still got somewhere, and told me all about it. So, you know, it's totally normal. But the thing is, I mean, it's the external things. It's like going to school, as you say. When I'm at school, nobody else was having that, so it was like, okay, my mum could only do so much, which was to make me feel normal. And I felt normal at home, but as soon as I got to school and, you know, the boys were going, oh, you know, making fun of my boobs and everything, you know, which young boys are going to do. It's, you know, it's what's happening externally. Your parents can't be there every moment of every day, you know, to hold your hand. And so, yes, I do agree. I do think that at school there should have been a lot more emphasis. As I say, that was the 90s, so I would think, and like to hope to think, that things have changed a bit.
I think what's really important to point out about all this is that you know, we're talking about, you know, kind of like childhood and things happening for the first time, and things are a lot, you know, even if it's something good that's happened when you're younger, things are a lot more traumatic when you're younger. But what we're talking about here as well with body image is that it's not something that's quite temporary. It does have quite long kind of lasting effects, and I know, and I think the physical side comes when we're trying to deal with it, and we're maybe doing unhealthy ways to deal with it, but also the kind of what's actually going through your mind and the mental impact of it. So you spoke a wee bit there about addiction, and it was like, you know, I mean, just kind of stories I've covered before in terms of like things like anorexia and bulimia and things like that. You know, these are things that maybe were quite taboo before, and there's a real obviousness about the physical aspect of that. But of course, what that is a mental disorder that's just lasted a long time, that it's got maybe caused that kind of physical living condition. So I mean, I just kind of want to kind of dive into a wee bit about, you know, what that kind of addiction is like. Is it like a kind of competitive, you know, kind of mindset? Is that a kind of always trying to give yourself that kind of buzz to kind of to you know, to make yourself feel better in a way, even if you know yourself it's not? Is it like, you know, what is it you're trying to do for yourself when you're going through all that?
Well, when I you know, started to alter my diet, and the way I'll put it, I was about 13 when it started, and within months it was, you know, I was going days and days without food. As I said, I was a master of deception, so I could hide it for a long time, although my mum did notice pretty quickly. But again, what can you do, a teenage girl? I felt, now, as to go with the addiction thing, first of all, there's this very obsessive behaviour that you start to engage in, such as constantly weighing yourself, which is a load of rubbish, because scales, you know, your weight fluctuates throughout the day. But when you're that age, you know, you just become so obsessed. If a pound comes off, you want to see another pound. You want to see, it gives you a wee buzz. There would also be the buzz of seeing the ribs appear and looking in the mirror. I would be constantly looking at myself in the mirror. The main thing that I really felt a buzz from, though, which I wouldn't advocate, so I'll just stress that, but the feeling of starvation gave me a buzz, if that makes sense. It was like a sort of a high almost. Okay, it was horrible as well, you know, because it's painful and it makes you feel drained of energy, and, you know, brain fog. But at the same time, there's a sort of high that came with it as well, a sort of delirium in a sense, and that can be addictive. So yeah, it's also very much, I mean, a lot of people, there is this sort of general assumption that eating disorders are all about control. You know, it tends to be people with, you know, who are quite controlling, or people who are organised planners that are more likely to fall victim to eating disorders. That wasn't I don't think that was what was the factor with me. It wasn't about control. For me, it was just I hated the way I looked. I hated everything about myself. I wanted to diminish everything. I just wanted to be thin, 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 you know. It was just this buzz of looking better in my mind in the mirror every time I lost more and more. So yeah, there's that sort of false assumption, as I say, about control. You know, for me, it was the body image. Ultimately, I just didn't like the way I was. It's something I actually thought recently. At the moment, obviously, there's a sort of trend for you know, for big booties. Now, I've always had a big booty. I've been, you know, it's just the way I am. Even when I lost loads of weight, I still had this large rear end. And I was thinking to myself recently, I thought, if I had been a teenager now, you know, how would I embrace? I would probably embrace that. I would love that, because it's the ideal at the moment. It just shows how fickle, like the media's portrayal of what's beautiful and what's perfect. I mean, now I don't really care, you know, but as I'm growing up, I've grown out of it all. But when you're that age, it's so difficult to comprehend what's going on around you in terms of how you present yourself to the world and how you feel, especially when your body's changing.
It's really important that you make that point, actually, because you, like you say, it is fickle. The things that are portrayed to be like idealistic or whatever, it's very interchanging, and it's changing all the time, and there's so many different influences now, which I suppose just kind of takes it on to, you know, I think it's probably something that is, I don't know if it's, I mean, I don't think it's more prone in one age group than another, but it seems very quite prevalent in young people. And for me, I think a big issue, a big factor in that is social media and what we're exposed to that way when it comes to body image. I think I think like likes of Instagram and stuff kind of clamp down on in the part they play in that, inadvertently, obviously, as it's happened. But I think when people do look at so basically we're exposed to so much more nowadays as opposed to maybe like the 90s, right? So so what's happening is we're getting all these different kind of you know views, and also the volume of what we are told is the ideal way to look or whatever, the volume of that is a lot higher, to the point it just kind of convinces us that we've done something wrong. And the thing to pick up on what you said before is that you're saying how you know the kind of idea of kind of looking in the mirror constantly and things like that, and it was a constant kind of, I'm not saying this for you, I'm just saying kind of like broadly, but I'd imagine it's like kind of like an almost like a kind of obsessive way to go about it, and because it's you know, because you're very aware of it, you're very self-conscious, and what that does is it just totally worsens our kind of mindset. In place of that, from the kind of recovery side, is things like self-care, self-love, and that kind of self-forgiveness as well. Not forgiveness for what you've done or how you look like, but forgiveness of how you think. And I mean, I think a lot of what we've kind of spoke about is just that kind of that long-lasting kind of mental impact of having like body image issues and any kind of disorder you've experienced through that. I think when Rebecca was speaking a lot about recovery, a lot of things that I've that kind of jumped out at me was is maybe kind of like, you know, kind of switching that energy from you know, maybe like that was going into the kind of unhealthy, you know, ways of kind of dealing with that kind of mental struggle, and like it you know, just what happens, it's the same for any that, you know, many issues that we talk about to do with mental health, is that we alleviate a lot of that through exercise and through the gym. And I think like and that's obviously very relevant with body image, especially because it's one way of transferring that, how you deal with it. I know I've not spoken about any of my experiences today, but I think what I can say is that you know, the body image does affect everybody, and males as well. I think a lot less men would maybe admit to it, maybe kind of over the years. But it's the same. Like, I mean, for gym pages and stuff, like Instagram is the place to go. So you need to remember how many men are consuming that media, and you know what to look like and stuff like that. And that's why people do get into gym and do get addicted to it as well. But for me, when I'm talking about that kind of transfer of energy, I'm talking about when you like attend the gym and you feel good about it after, and you're getting that kind of buzz, and it's releasing your kind of good, you kind of feel good hormones. And I think that's I think that's one thing that I think a lot of us can maybe kind of like agree on. It's kind of healthy outlet for it, as well as any other form of self-care. I consider like gyms and exercise a form of self-care, but obviously right now we're very, very limited to what we can do, aren't we, Catherine?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, me personally, I'm not a massive fan of gyms, but I do really love my home workouts, and I've kind of created a home gym for myself since March. I've invested in weights and dumbbells and home workout equipment that I can use. So I definitely agree that it's good to channel like your energy that you would maybe consuming, like trying to lose weight, but trying to do something more positive with it. For me, it's about promoting healthy image, not body image. And I think I definitely agree with Rebecca when it comes to media portrayals of how we should look. Still, to this day, you still see front covers of women on magazines, and I'm not 100% certain, but they've probably been airbrushed to look a certain way. To make their skin look clearer, to make their hips look slightly smaller, to make their tummy slightly thinner. And even for me, that's still, you look at that and you're an adult, and you deep down like that you don't have to look like that. That's not real. That's not you. But you're still wondering, should I be looking like that? What can I do to look like that? And for me, it's so important to remember that everybody's different. All our body images and shapes are different, and that's okay. And it's okay to look different, and it's okay not to look like a stick thin insect, because our metabolism rates are different as well. I'm one of these people, I can go on this crazy diet, and then once I get to a certain weight, I can keep dieting and the weight will just not come off because of my body shape, because I need to be a certain weight. And I think it's also really unhelpful as well when you are working out and you are I work out every day, not because I want to lose weight, but because it's self-care. Like Matt said, it's self-care. Yeah. It releases positive endorphins. It makes me feel so much better. And it also, if I've had a stressful day, I like working out to blow off steam, to blow off energy. And it stops me from opening a bottle of wine in the kitchen to relieve stress that way. So if I'm doing a home workout, kickboxing home workout, I feel so much better afterwards. But again, I would like to stress that it's not for losing weight purposes. If I lose a couple of pounds, that's great. If my jeans fit a bit better than they did the day before, fantastic. But it's about healthy living, healthy heart, healthy liver. And it's so important what we put into our bodies as well, that we don't starve ourselves, because that's not good for us either. It's important to have 3 meals a day, maybe make them slightly smaller, slightly healthier, or still have the same amount, but just substitute your chips for something else, rice. Or you can even, there are so many recipes online where you can turn vegetables into substitutes for unhealthy things. Another thing for me, as much as I do love my home workouts, it really annoys me when the workout instructor on the screen is that really skinny person as well. And even though they are helping you and they're just doing their job, and they do say all the right things, and it's about healthy image and nutrition, you still can't help but wonder why, even after doing all these workouts, you don't look like the person on the screen. Then,
sorry to burst in, but what you see is not what everyone else sees in you. I mean, I think you're lovely and tall and slim.
You haven't seen me in a long time. But no, I appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. I think we're all very harsh on ourselves as well. Like, yeah, so I think we have this expectations that we should look a certain way, we should eat a certain way, we should have accomplished certain things by a certain age. And life's not a race. We need to stop putting ourselves under so much pressure. And again, by putting ourselves under that pressure, it increases anxiety, increases stress levels, and it just makes our mental health worse. And that's not the point.
One thing that I think I've started to notice, particularly like following fitness accounts on Instagram and things, I've noticed that there's a lot more emphasis now on ignoring the scales. For a long time, it was always assumed, and there's that BMI, which is a lot of garbage, because if you're an Olympic swimmer, you're going to have a high BMI because you get strong muscle tone and you're going to be, you know. But basically, from what I've been reading lately, it seems that the scales are just a load of garbage. You just, within reason, obviously, but for most people who are within a sort of healthy weight range, it's not something you should dwell over. And also a well-known fact is muscle is, you know, much denser than fat anyway. So if you gain muscle and lose fat, you could easily have gained weight on the scales, but you look thinner.
I completely agree with that, and I actually have had to kind of come to terms with that quite recently.
Yeah, I don't weigh myself at all.
I hadn't weighed myself in about a year. So with my kind of health and wellness journey, it started in about 2014, and I was a wee bit overweight, and I have to say, go on a diet, but it wasn't a starvation diet. I just cut down unhealthy foods and started eating healthily, like I said, and I started exercising, and I managed to lose enough weight, and I was fitting my clothes better, and I felt I looked okay, and I felt to kind of keep that weight off until lockdown. And I have never owned a set of scales until recently. And at the beginning of lockdown, we started this new health and wellness journey. Gyms were shut, so we started doing these online workouts.
Yeah.
And we took pictures and measurements to kind of mark our progress. And from the pictures, I could see progress. But by the time I got on the scales, I was heavier than when I started, and I was absolutely gutted. But then I was reminded that muscle weighs more than fat, and to try not to be too disheartened by it, because as I said to you guys earlier, I'm now lifting a lot of heavy weights that I never lifted before, and I'm working out every day, whereas before I was maybe only working out 2 or 3 times a week and not that seriously, whereas now I'm taking it really seriously. And I feel like if I were the weight that I was when I first started this journey, my clothes would not fit me the way they do now. That's the only thing that I've kind of got, and I just wish the scales, like there was like a section in the scales that brought it down, like this is how much you weigh, this is how much fat you have, and this is how much muscle you have, and then they would join it together so you actually knew how much you weighed before the muscle was added on. And I think that would be so much better for me anyway.
It's like when they, you know, you measure your body fat percentage. That's for me is a more accurate kind of measure on. I mean, I think like overall body weight is it just, you know, it's not an exclusive metric of your health. Just as we're talking about there. So I understand, like, it's pretty much like Rebecca said, just kind of, it's not, you know, almost just forget about that thing. I mean, if people having an ideal weight, fine, you know, make sure that's healthy, and then just, you know, work towards it. The other point I need to make on that as well is that, remember, it is a personal journey. You are working towards your own capabilities. You know, my weight is an unhealthy weight for somebody else. I think my weight right now is a healthy weight for me, but it's an unhealthy weight for somebody else. Very easily. In the same way, any other kind of metric, my body fat percentage, for example, and everything else, it is all relative, but it's what you can do. You can't compare yourself to what you see. You can't compare yourself to, you know, the limits that someone else is pushing themselves to. When we're talking about what we see in the media and what we see in social media, is that when you tapped on it there with severe brush and what that, you know, kind of like false images, and what that is that we are almost kind of buying into like a kind of like a false idealistic view on body image, and we need to kind of obviously bring ourselves back to that self-awareness that it's not. I know that we you know, the kind of rational version of ourselves know that, but it does play in your mind. And I think that is why social media companies have improved the part they play, and, you know, improving that and making sure that it's not this kind of competitive society where it's all kind of, you know, like falsehoods, and we're all trying to live a life that doesn't exist. We're all trying to aspire to something that doesn't exist. And that for me is what body image is nowadays. I can't speak for everybody of all ages there, but from what I see and an outside perspective sometimes is that, so the only way you can really kind of validate yourself in any form, but especially in your mental capacity and your body, is be internally happy and kind of validate yourself internally, and be happy that way. That satisfies you. Nobody can intercept that feeling you get, and it's up to you to kind of be aware of that. And that's where self-care comes into it, and that's where these kind of practices improves all of that, so that you can actually be happy within yourself and not have these maybe unhealthy conditions that do kind of last in your mind for a long time.
Well, talking about self-care there, as I was saying earlier about that buzz that I got of not eating for days on end, that can be, you can still get a buzz, but in a healthy way. Like, yeah. I've recently discovered, I only started going to the gym about a year ago, and obviously that finished, because of lockdown and everything, but I was going again a few months ago, and I discovered that I love weightlifting. I absolutely love it, and I get such a buzz after it, and it's the same. Okay, it's a healthier buzz, but it's certainly something that's something I would advocate, because I'm not saying you don't want to starve yourself, you don't want to deprive yourself of anything. What I was doing before was negative, was making me ill, and could have had long-term effects, whereas what I'm doing now, or what until obviously lockdown, the buzz I was getting off of lifting heavy weights, pulling heavy weights, it just felt great. And it wasn't, it's not in terms of, I might not, my weight has kind of stayed the same for years. I'm one of these people that sort of stay the same. So regardless of whether I lose weight or ever at the gym or tone up, I don't know. It is more about being the best version of yourself, the best version of what you can be,
Absolutely. I think that's the kind of key point that we've definitely made in the kind of second half of this podcast, is that it is that best version of yourself. It's what works for you, and it's really what does get the the kind of best out of you. And it's such and these kind of and these kind of healthy outlets to deal with them, because let's be honest, I think body image is always going to exist for people at some level. No matter no matter what you're kind of going through and what stage you're at. But you have but you do evolve to kind of cope with things differently, and you have control over your different goals, which again change all the time, your different kind of ambitions, aspirations to do with body image and physical health. So it's very, very relevant to all. And like I said, we want everybody to make sure that they are aware of that, and it is a journey, and therefore we're so capable of looking after ourselves well and just promoting healthy body image, which I think is one thing that we all agree on.
And again, to highlight that it is also, we're all on a different journey. No two people, no two body types are the same. So as hard as it can be sometimes, like, please don't ever compare yourself to a celebrity, because high chances are they've been airbrushed. Maybe not by much, but definitely to give them that glow as well. And it's just not natural. They might make it look natural, but it's not realistic. And we need to remember that, and we need to not put so much pressure on ourselves to look a certain way, but definitely give ourselves the best opportunity to be responsible and healthy and to look after ourselves.
Absolutely.
And it's certainly, I think, when you're feeling better, like, obviously, like, after starving myself, I might have felt better to an extent, but I didn't feel healthy, whereas the buzz after exercise and pumping weights, you feel so healthy, you feel so, like, you just feel you're glowing in a way, and I think as long as you approach it in that sense, approach it in terms of trying to make yourself more healthy and more fit, rather than looking a certain way, I think that starts to fall into place eventually. If you feel healthy and feel good and your overall well-being is good from exercise, I think then the feelings towards the way you look kind of fall into place. You feel a bit better in yourself, more confident if you're feeling healthy. I don't know, that's just...
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the long game with it all. And again, like, I get, I think that's once we kind of bring ourselves to that awareness, then we are a lot more focused and a lot more healthier. And yeah, like I say, guys, this is I think this is just a really kind of like positive conversation that we've kind of made on body image itself. It is a mental struggle, so it is a mental health issue. There's no denying that, and it's one thing that that you're always going to kind of deal with at different kind of times of your life. But remember, it's all about bringing back to your own kind of control and healthy ways of doing that. And like I said, we'll always do our best to kind of promote that and bring this content to light on the podcast. So just kind of wrapping up on this, I just want to say that we are during lockdown right now. We are suffering quite a bad start to the year, I would say. There's no denying that mental health is taking a bit of a kicking right now. So we're going to do our best to make sure these are published as regular as we can on a weekly basis, which we're doing right now. And they are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts as well as thrivethru.co.uk, which you'll see all our content, including Rebecca's content on our arts and crafts and anything else really that puts a positive light on our mental health. We do that the best we can. So please subscribe and like the video and tune into all our content coming up. Just from all of us here, thanks again for joining us on Thrive Through.
Absolutely. And we will have more videos for you next week.